Shalom. What is the point of all these denominations today? There's a new thing called non-denominational Judaism, trans-denominational Judaism. What is that all about? Well, I grew up with an Orthodox education through 7th grade. My youth groups were conservative. I was trained by the flagship conservative seminary. I spent 2 summers at a wonderful Reform camp. My father was a Reconstructionist. I serve, I think, the only synagogue in the world that's affiliated with both the Reconstructionist conservative movement. You know my view of all this, basically? Who knows if it's going to exist 200 years from now? I mean, these terms have only existed since the early part of the 19th century. We've had 4,000 years of Judaism. We had plenty of other names before that have disappeared: the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Essenes, Hasidei Ashkenaz. And there seems to be a lot of bridging in the gap on the edges. For example, the Reform movement, when I grew up, had a almost all English siddur that opened from the English side. You couldn't wear a kippah or a talis. They celebrated treifness, honestly, serving ham at the seminaries to rabbinical students. But nowadays, it's hard to tell them apart sometimes. I mean, they don't have all the right prayers in my mind, but a Reform service, their siddur looks like a conservative siddur. You'll see plenty of people with talitot and kippot. They're growing fast. There's a renewed emphasis on Jewish study and using the word mitzvot. The conservative movement, certainly the lay people are basically the same. I mean, there may be a few more that keep kosher, and they may want services with a little more Hebrew, but despite all the theology of the conservative movement, the people are basically living as choosing their own mitzvot, which is the hallmark of Reform. When I was growing up, the Reconstructionist movement celebrated the fact it didn't believe in a personal God, and now I'm told you can actually believe in a personal God and attend the Reconstructionist seminary. The services are not that different than some Reform and some conservative. And there's a big argument in the Reconstructionist movement about how much tradition they should put back in the liturgy. And Orthodoxy is going both ways. There's an interesting book about Orthodoxy recently which talks about the wide variety, but you have some Orthodoxy on the edges, which is getting close to traditional conservative. Of course, then you have fanatic Orthodoxy. So among the purists, there may be some ideological differences. There are a lot of people who have jobs at stake in maintaining these denominational differences. But honestly, these terms have been 5% of Jewish history. And most Jews want to go to the closest synagogue. Sometimes they'll travel a little bit further if they like the rabbi or their friends go there. But most Jews are not denominationally motivated. The Orthodox may be, and the people that grew up in a staunch movement may be. Of course, personal life factors may influence it. For example, people think that they're more welcome if they're intermarried or gay in a Reform or Reconstructionist synagogue. Maybe. In any case, there are some synagogues now that pride themselves on being unaffiliated, that they can appeal to all Jews. Sometimes it's the only show in town. I know some synagogues will be Reform Friday night and conservative, quote-unquote, Saturday morning. But that's kind of how to understand this unfolding idea of non-denominationalism or trans-denominationalism. There's a book by Samuel Friedman, Jew versus Jew, which discusses various issues in the American Jewish community. It's very interesting. At the end of the book, he basically prophesies that in the end of the matter, there'll be a reshuffling of the decks here of affiliations because of the way in which the American Jewish community is speaking with its feet. What is the marketplace telling us? It seems to be telling us that non-denominationalism is something that is more important to American Jews, and that denominational affiliation may not be that significant in the long haul of Jewish history.